Okay, first time to say all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Bashim Yahushua Bashim Kalkadash. I'm get double honor to the elders, apostles, and teachers, great millstone from my learning and truth. Now say Shalom to the hopeful elect of Israel. And I think it was yesterday or maybe the day before that. Yeah, the elder apostle. I think it was the elder, not Zagba, of GMS South Carolina. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's him. Of South Carolina, that had did a response to some weirdo nigga. He does a lot of those, like apparently, like I'm not really on TikTok or anything, but there's a lot of dumbasses on TikTok that call themselves debunking the Israelites, which is actually funny because their so-called debunking is just their own personal twist on the Bible. I find it interesting how the vast majority of them, they don't when they talk, they don't have a Bible in front of them. They literally just talk. That's all they do. They just talk. And when it comes to us, we open up the Bible and we bring things out of it. So if you want to call yourself debunking us, telling us the truth of the Bible, then would it not make sense to actually have a Bible with you? That's just me, but there were some dumbass that said how why do we have to study the scriptures? The English translation should be good enough. And the guy, obviously the guy is just a nigger, right? But just for a point of verification of the importance of actually going into words is the fact that the English language, especially, everybody knows it's a bastardized language. It's a language that is subject to change quite often. For example, the term whip. Normally, in 2026, when you hear the word whip, a vehicle would come to mind because that's the slang. That's a more normalized slang term for a car, a whip. Now, if you go back a few hundred years and you ask, hey, where are the whips? A nigga's gonna take you to an actual whip shop where niggas get their ass, the whip where niggas get their ass handed to them. But that's just, the term faggot is another one, right? When you go into the etymology of the word faggot, it literally means a bundle of sticks. But today, it's been formed into a derogatory term. The reason I mention this why is because, and especially in English, words have been, their meanings have been changed, their usage have been changed. That's why when we want to take a look in the Bible, if you want to understand what these men meant when these visions were given to them, when they said these things, you have to go back into the original language, because this has been proven time and time again that the original language, many of those words have completely different meanings from what the meanings that we give them, because the meanings have been fucking changed over fucking time. That's why, scriptures say study to show ourselves approved. When you think of studying, the first thing that comes to mind is what? Looking up fucking definitions of things. So you can have a greater understanding of what you're working with. And that's with everything. I remember when I was in college, there were entire nights I would spend studying. And the vast majority of, it was for what I was in, but even with everything else, because that a good portion of your coursework is definitions. And what would you have to do? You would have to look up the meanings of the definitions, so you know what exactly you're fucking working with, so you don't misuse a term, or so you don't do a mathematical equation incorrectly, right? But I'm starting here at Genesis 6 because I was just actually skimming through scripture, just reading here and there and whatnot. And I found it interesting just going to what the word, because we know giants in the scriptures, in history, there were men that were physically tall and imposing, but you have the whole Nephilim thing, which is complete and fucking bullshit. And when you go into the word here for giant, it's proven that it's bullshit. And this is another piece of proof of the importance of going into the meanings and definitions of words. Because vast majority of people, they see giants and say, oh, Nephilim and all this shit. But what does the word actually mean? So you can get a greater and deeper understanding of what the fuck you're working with. But I'm just gonna start Genesis 6 because it goes to the Son of God dealing with the heathen women. And you got niggas that say that the guys dealt with women, and then from that you had giants that were born. And once again, you had physically imposing niggas back then. Goliath was a tall motherfucker. If I'm not mistaken, he's the tallest out of I know he was a Hamite, but I'm trying to remember. I can't, right off the top of my head, I can't remember what fucking faction of Hamite he was from. But he was their champion. He was their warrior. Well, their champion, because they were warriors, but he was a champion. The tall motherfucker, a big nigga. So you had physically imposing men, and he was a heathen, by the way. So, but it wasn't like some fucking like that shit that you see from like Noah's Ark, where you had fucking rock monsters and shit like that. It wasn't no shit. It wasn't any type of shit like that. This is Genesis 6:1. And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, which were us. We later became known as the children of Israel. And when you actually go into that, there's a literal lineage that this can be traced with, like a literal blood, and it's in the scriptures. You can literally run down the name all the way to Abraham, tracks directly back to Shem. But even before then, you had sons of Noah. No, he was a part of that line too. So there's a literal bloodline. But sons of God saw the daughters of men and were fair, were attractive, and they took them wives, of all which they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for he is also flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, they bare to them children. To them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. And those children, they weren't like fucking half angel, half demon monsters or shit. That term, just like, for example, you have the term giant, right? Or a beast. Or for example, you have a Revelation mention, Daniel as well, mentions refers to a kingdom or a power system as a beast. Was it physically a beast? Is Esau's power structure physically a dragon? No, those are just characteristics to give you a description of the way in which this nigga operates. He was a ferocious, the way he operates, for example, Trump, right? The way this nigga operating is like a beast, kicking asses and taking names. Maybe not so much now, but there was a point, and even America still has a certain measure of dominance, by the way, but there was a certain point where America had control over the whole fucking earth, where the Romans, they had control over the whole earth. And they were what? They were monsters, smashing every fucking thing in sight and taking whatever the fuck they wanted. And what does a beast or what does a monster do? It crushes everything in sight, and it does what it fucking wants. It's a ferocious, horrible creature, right? And that's how America's power structure is. Similar thing with the description of the sons of those sons of God that came from, us intermingling with heathen women. It talks about how they were giants, and it says men of renown. Men who got fame to themselves because of their deeds. They were giant in deeds. They weren't some physically fucking half angel monsters and shit. But that, I guess that's kind of besides the point. Well, no, I guess that plays into it as well. Just like the whole point of this is the importance of actually going into the meaning of words, because on the surface level, you'd say, hey, Nephilim, this, that, blah, 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 right? Hell is another example, by the way. But when you go into the definition here, it says giants, the Nephilim. So, you think that, okay, it must be talking about giants and Nephilim. Go down further. Where is it? Here it is. just gonna read a little bit into this. Try to read as much as I can. I'm driving right now. It says giants. So all the ancient versions, the constellation Orion, the greater constellation, etymology of this word is uncertain. Some have compared, it's gonna say whatever it is, which getting cast render, great, large, and body, but this is incorrect. For it means excellent, noble, skillful. I prefer the Hebrew interpreters. Is of intransitive signification. What the fuck is all these words? Those who use to interpret the passage in Genesis of the fall of the angels were accustomed to render apostles, apostate, followers, apostles, apostate. But it mentions how that interpretation of it being, like these half angel, half demon beings is incorrect. And it says noble, skillful, excellent. In other words, it says men of renown. I didn't look up what renown meant. I'm just gonna get that really quickly. Because you think that, hey, men, if they're men of renown, they're well known. For what? For their deeds, for their excellence, for, whatever skills, kicking ass or whatever, Says, oh, well, yes, that's a way better way I'll put it. Reputation, fame, glory, memorial, monument. I'm not reading all that shit. But, to acquire fame for oneself, famous men, nobles, son of an ignoble, noble themselves sprung from ignoble race, or make them praised and famous. So pretty much it all goes back to the same thing, being known for your deeds. But, this is pretty much going to be it. But, this is just, like I said, some interesting about how going back into the meaning of words give you greater understanding of things. And once again, this is the importance of actually studying and not just taking things for face value. Because dumbasses like him will take, John 3:16 for face value, ignoring everything that came from that. But I'm hoping Zephon, hope it made sense. So y'all praises, glory, and honor. How about Shema Shah, Bashem Dr. Dash, the one says, positive teacher, Mills, and truth. Shall want to hope like Israel, instruction about Great America.